So the last episode I did, I spoke with a mutual person that we both know, Travis Bacon.
Oh, yeah, right. You did tell me that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's so funny because now I was like, I had a couple different people or interviews or things I wanted to do for the podcast lined up, and we had mentioned you on the podcast. Then we ran into each other at Irving Plaza, and I know you have your new project, and I was like, you know what? This is the time to sit down and talk to Chris again and just have you on the podcast. So I was like, let's just follow it up and let's just roll with it. I mean, that's what's great about Nobody Speaks podcast is just me and whoever. So I can just like change stuff on the fly.
Thanks, man. I love that you're doing this because we obviously have known each other for a while and we've been involved in like anything to stay involved with what's happening is just an exciting thing, especially in the times that we're in. So it's just cool to be on the same page. Like you and I are obviously lifers. We're not going anywhere,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. I mean, you more so than I are continuing to play. I'm still trying to stay plugged in and involved where I can. As a songwriter, a singer songwriter, I've kind of hung my hat up a little bit, and I'm just waiting for the next musical path for me. I'm not like completely done, and music is still my lifeblood. So this is my way of continuing it, and the fact that I've been discovering new music and can go to shows again is I think becoming a little bit more inspiring for me. It's finding musicians to finally work with again because just being solo for so many years, I'm just kind of over it.
I,
you
re- I
know?
really think you should do it again, Antonio, because it's like the right time right now for us. Like
Yeah.
people are so obsessed with like the early 2000s and 90s, which you and I were a huge part of, even in our little worlds. Like and with that sort of X Taking Back Sunday behind you, as much as I'm sure it's had different things in your past, I think right now it's probably more relevant than it ever was. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like this whole renaissance of like 90s early 2000s is like blowing my mind.
It really is. And even just the bands that are coming out that were influenced by it. Yeah, there's a lot of the reunions going on. I was lucky enough to score um, My Chemical Romance tickets for USB Arena because my son is 11 and he discovered them like 2 years ago, and it was like mind blowing to him. And I'm like, dude, you missed the heyday. You missed when I used to play with them because you weren't around. you know, but I'm getting to take him to that, and it's a great connection for us as a father son. Um,
Absolutely.
People can talk shit all they want on My Chemical Romance. They probably wrote two of the catchiest fucking records that have ever come out of New Jersey and out of our scene. And I'm like, dude, I'm excited to take him. Like,
I'm with you, man. I think that I've really humbled myself. I probably needed to, but I really humbled myself as I got older because the truth is like we are in a position now where it's like the youth, and you have a son. I don't have kids, but I definitely have like godchildren and
mhm.
nephews and nieces and whatnot. And it's like beyond that, it's just like it's very interesting that younger people are like discovering these things, and
Yeah.
you have to kind of see it through their lens because when you and I were younger, we probably didn't think about this, but there were probably older dudes that thought Nirvana was lame or something
Yeah.
because they were listening to Minor Threat or Black Flag
Yeah. Because it was
before.
on the radio and they were too DIY or punk.
Exactly. Like I don't really understand. Not that I don't understand, but like my girlfriend took me to see a bunch of younger bands recently, and like one band in particular that was great that I probably would have never heard of called Greet Death. Kind
Okay.
of like a shoegaze '90s alternative band. It sold
Hmm.
out by this. Everybody in there was between 21 and 25 years old,
Right.
um, and they were fantastic. And they started playing something in a bridge that was familiar to me, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I later realized it was Blink 182, and everyone in that room
Uh,
looked like very
yeah.
touched
Yeah.
by it. And even though it doesn't really resonate for me or you probably, I was like, all right, things have changed. I'm not in a position to be a snobby person about anything anymore. This is not my world. This is
Yeah.
their world, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, many years ago, I mean, we're talking, God, what I mean, I know it's also relevant to what's going on. But many years ago, I started doing stuff like this pre-podcasting. I don't know if you remember, but for a really short time, I had a website called Scene Snob. And I was interviewing musicians. I interviewed like Chuck Reagan. I interviewed the Gaslight Anthem, and this is right when the '59 sound came out. I actually have the poster from when they played it at Looney Tunes, and they signed it for me. Um, and I've always liked to do this kind of stuff because we grew up in the time of fanzines. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a shitty speller. I type incorrectly. I probably would have photocopied it fucked up. Where was I gonna hand it out? So I kind of jumped on that like years ago, and then it kind of fell through because the internet was changing and everything, you know. But I called it Scene Snob because like we used to be so like, no, what we like is what's good. We're from Long Island. This music's coming out. You know what I mean? Yeah, we'll let some Jersey bands in, but
We were
like
so snobby. We were even snobby to each
unbelievable.
other.
Yeah,
I
100%.
you know, I wanted to point that out too because I kind of like, I'm like, God, I was such a dick. You know what I mean? Like, but everybody kind of was. Like I
Yeah,
actually had to explain this to a few people recently. In fact, one friend of mine who is from New York, but just not like literally like from Queens,
yeah,
like 20 minutes away from Long Island, like needed me to explain to him the difference of like the vibe. And I'm like, we had some really great music, but I'm not gonna lie, we were definitely like kind of snobby, and it's
yeah,
true, we were snobby to each other. It's like, I think I was telling my bandmates that too. I'm like, it's my only thing, my only complaints, and probably guilty of it myself. Like, I don't know why, but like people on Long Island were very even snobby with each other. And that being said, it's cool to get older and recognize that, because I think we're all, especially the folks that are still around, we kind of can look back at it and laugh and recognize it. But it really
yeah.
was very snobby.
Yeah,
Um,
let's think about this. Like Glassjaw's doing all these reunion shows, and they had Tension play with them the other
right,
night.
that was dope.
Now, back in the day, way Suffolk County bands weren't even accepted to play shows with like Nassau County bands. Like that's how far of a line there was at certain times where like certain bands were clicky, and you wouldn't like, yes, that bill did eventually happen, but when both of those bands were there in their infant stages, they would have never played together because even
Oh,
within
dude.
the Long Island scene, it was separated. And you and I know that more than anyone else because I was in Scarab. We didn't fit with any
Yeah, yeah.
other band. And even the bands where you were doing back in the day sometimes didn't fit either.
We didn't fit either sometimes. Like, it was
Yeah.
always, it's funny now. I can't believe I didn't realize who I said that to. I was explaining it to Walter. That's who I was explaining it
Oh,
to.
get out.
Yeah, me and Justin Skirty were trying to explain Long Island to Walter, and he didn't really understand it. And we were talking
Yeah.
about how the youth crew people, which was before us, they were all
Yeah.
friends and supportive of each other. And I was saying Long Island bands, a lot of the bands that got really successful, especially as that happened, you kind of like, they just kind of forgot about you in a way. Not
Yeah.
all of them, but like, um, but it was also like what you just said back in the day, like Hugo and I used to work at Merch Direct, and this was like
Right.
around when Worship and Tribute came out,
Mhm.
and everyone that worked there was in a band, and I felt like there was a hierarchy. I kind of said that Long Island was like very like a fraternity,
Mhm.
and we weren't really respected as much because our
Yeah.
band weren't as cool as everyone else's that worked there, and we kind of got clowned a little bit at times. And I quit, but now Beck is totally cool with me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
back then, it didn't really feel the love. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there there
It's
there
very
was
bizarre.
yeah, there was that. I mean, even, you know, yeah, I I had kind of mentioned to a mutual friend of ours who I'm just going to keep like band names and people's names out of it,
Yeah, me too, me too.
about certain bands that or people in bands that I loved that shunned me because maybe I wasn't in a band that was as cool as them. I mean, the amount of people that did not support Taking Back Sunday when I was in it
Right.
is gigantic. It wasn't until we could pack out a tiny bar and people would be jumping off the bar that people would even then pay attention from certain other bands. And I had sent this to someone who was as big could be to us in the Long Island scene. And that person even felt it from other people. And I was like, no way,
Yeah.
so I was, it's been humbling throughout the years to know that like people that even whose music and friendship I like highly regarded felt the same way. And it's interesting, like you said, like I think it was just our arrogant youth. It was the
Yep.
fact that we were involved in something that was fresh and new and evolving. And it was a very pivotal time in the music scene because, yeah, Nirvana hit the radio and even though it technically wasn't underground at that point because it had hit the radio, it it was knocking off the hair bands. It was killing the cheesy pop, and it was giving like a gateway to kind of what we were doing in a different way.
Yeah.
And then things were starting to blow up. you know Things went from 7 inches to CDs, which now made it easier to copy and share. The
Yeah.
internet was coming along. I mean, what it's like when we
Absolutely.
toured it, when you had to have a map and MapQuest directions and you didn't have a cell phone yet.
I talk
Like,
about that so much.
how scary is that? We literally were getting in vans, shitty vans, and driving across the country with nothing. Just
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
like we were fucking Jack Kerouac. You know what I mean?
We bought on the Night of Prince's bought Sky Came Falling's bus, and it fucking broke down 3 times and then caught fire.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
um, and then we had to forge Greyhound tickets to get back to Long Island from like Houston, Texas.
Yeah, they were crazy times. And you know, so now like you said, full circle, a lot of these bands there's reinsurgences. We've got, you know, I was the happiest I've been in a long time when I picked up my phone and I ordered my, what is it, Blue Banana or whatever
Oh, South
copy of
Majority.
Silent Majority because I had that record on 12-inch and it got jacked from me by an ex-girlfriend.
God
And
damn.
it's one of the records that I regret the most not having in my collection, being a music fan and a vinyl collector. And I'm like, wow, all these old records are getting saved, like all this stuff we'll hopefully be able to see again. Still some of my favorite albums, like, I mean, Mind Over Matter and Silent Majority, they were my Nirvana. They were my Pearl Jam to a lot of other kids. So those are getting saved, like bands are still touring. I mean, shit, Hot Water Music just dropped probably their best fucking record, and
Gotta
I've
hear it.
loved that band forever. Dude, like you need to listen to it. Like
Dude, I gotta
it's
check it out. You're gonna think I'm crazy, but I like haven't really sat through an entire full length since No Division, so I need to like check it out.
oh yeah, there's
Actually, that's a lie. I heard the one after that.
yeah,
That was the last one. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, which is good because you know what? Now you have a chunk of music to go back to that you can listen to, like, which is always fun when that happens. But those guys are still doing it. Um, which is amazing. Glassjaw is hitting all these reunion shows. I mean, we
Yeah.
just got to see Quicksand.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so some of the stuff I wanted to talk about, yeah, is like, all right, live music is back. New York City is officially fucking alive again.
Yeah, it is,
So
man. It really
in
is.
in the past week, let's go over it. Like Touche Amore at Irving Plaza, we ran
Yeah.
into each other. That's a band I discovered in the beginning of the pandemic. I got to see them live when they opened up for Thrice when the world started opening up again. And the set wasn't long enough for me because it's the intensity that comes through on their records does not match the intensity from when they play live. And it's been a long time since someone's knocked me off my feet. And I was like, I felt every bit of energy. And to see them now headlining Irving, I was like,
Pumped. Yeah. And then like to see like, younger bands, like that goes back to what I was saying before. Like, even if you don't not saying you don't, but even if those new bands aren't for you, like what they're doing is basically the shit that we were doing,
Yeah.
like even the way they're dressed. It's
Yeah.
like really
That
funny,
it,
you
it
know?
had it had that feeling and humbleness of like, when I first saw, like, when From Autumn to Ashes finally got to headline Irving Plaza.
Right,
Like
right.
the childlike look on Scott's face when he was able to do that, you know, was so awesome. And I felt like I was rewatching as we watched our friends' bands hitting those stages and
Yeah,
hitting those points. So you're right. It's like,
absolutely.
and those guys are so influenced by the stuff that we were, from
Oh,
back in the
without a
day.
doubt. I mean, and like, yeah, Touche Amore, I think is really cool because they are like probably the closest thing I would think to like the OG emo, like
Mhm.
Embrace or something, like
Yeah.
going back to that kind of like Rites of Spring, like the real stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're obviously like incorporating modern touches to it, and but like Jeremy, the vocalist, like he has like some kind of like if you watch like an old Embrace video on YouTube, there's
Mhm.
something similar, and I mentioned that to him after the show. Like he exudes that kind of energy and the sincerity and the unpretentiousness and just his whole vibe is like super sincere and
Yeah,
very real.
and the whole like poetic nature of his lyrics. I mean, and refused. I could see
Yeah,
is a
oh yeah,
very
absolutely, yeah.
exactly. I saw the shirt, but it feels like the energy they have reminds me of the energy that I saw the first time I saw Refused at the PWAC.
I see that. I was there. That was a crazy show. Uh,
Yeah,
that was insane. That when they were still wearing like Earth Crisis and Snapcase shirts and shit.
yeah, and that was literally the tour that they broke up later on in during that
Right.
tour after that album came out, and and the album basically just then like sat and lingered and slowly grew its popularity as they were already done. Uh,
That's so strange how that happens, but also like really cool. And I think that is happening to a lot of bands from 20 years ago. I feel like this always happens in time, like 20 years of something that's recycled again, you know?
yeah,
Like in the
yeah,
beginning of the 2000s, I thought that was happening with like maybe the 80s, you know what I mean? Like late 70s, early 80s, you could see that was happening with like the Strokes and all the
yes,
bands that came after that.
uh-huh,
And I think that's happening now for like the stuff that we were a part of, which is again, not to beat a dead horse, but so bizarre but awesome at the same time.
oh yeah, it was,
Yeah.
it's a time in my life that, if somebody said, you know if somebody said how impactful it was going to be, I've been like, oh, we're just hanging out with our friends on a Saturday night,
Oh
like,
yeah. I mean, like
you
more
know,
specifically, like how could you ever imagine like any of those bands that would be like okay, Glassjaw, you probably have been seeing them longer than me, and they're not nearly as big as Taking Back Sunday or some of the other bands that have come out of the scene, but like, when we saw them at the PWAC and they came out and they were covering Corn. I don't
yeah,
know if you remember that show,
I
and they're
do.
like, who thought that like they would be selling out places today in 2022. You
Yeah,
know, that's just crazy. It's awesome.
and it's interesting too because they did the two albums at the Paramount back to back, and the fact I don't know if it was the opening bands, the albums, or just what everybody had going on, but Saturday's worship and tribute show sold out, where everything you wanted to know about Silence didn't, and I'm like, really?
I have to imagine it's the woke sort of culture that is reacting to that. You know,
Right. Yeah, it could be. And but then I was talking to someone, and Worship and Tribute was the gateway album for their second wave of their fan base.
okay,
Like
that's my favorite. I love that record.
yeah, I mean I do too, and yes, there are some questionable lyrics on everything you want to know about Silence.
It's okay for us to say he apologized. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I absolutely did. And I know, and that's the thing is, us knowing Daryl, I know that that stuff was just teenage rage. I know that,
Yeah.
there was no actual harm being done to anyone. There was no, you know what I mean? Like that was, outward and an insane expression of emotion. And yeah, like it was a different time, but those songs, just from a song standpoint, hit, at the time that they needed to hit, and what it was doing. I mean, I love both records, but I was just I was very surprised. I was like, wow. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
unfortunately missed both of them because Friday was my birthday and
Oh, man.
Saturday I had Quicksand tickets, and
Oh,
you
shit.
know
Happy belated.
yeah. So, Quicksand was gonna trump Glassjaw for me, because they're I mean, Quicksand Slip will always be in my top 5 favorite albums of all time.
Hell yeah.
Uh, Walter is, I mean, I've obviously been in the same room as him, even the same, circle. He said hello, being that he's friends with, you and Artie and everybody, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still get so like in awe of
Me
that
too.
guy every time I see him, and he has influenced me in so many ways. So I was like, oh, I couldn't wait to see Quicksand. Melissa had never seen them. So I had made her this mega playlist of all my favorite Quicksand songs, and she was like super pumped.
Fuck
And
yeah.
now that she saw them live, she was like, I get it. And now I want to listen to them even more. And
Yeah.
that's the magic of guys like that and bands like that. I mean, there are the two front men I idolize. I don't say it idolize, I don't give a shit. Most in music that are front men that play guitar are Walter and Artie.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, shit, I feel the same. I feel the same exact way you do because my first show in Long Island was watching Artie play. He was actually in Bad Trip at the time,
Right.
but he was singing and playing guitar.
Yeah.
And I was always intimidated by Artie. And speaking of, I mean, I feel like me and him are close enough for me to say this, but like he was actually a great example of someone who's a total dick to me back in the day. And he's one of my best friends now. So like, it shows. But like, I was totally shook by him, as I was by Silent Majority and other people. Like I was nervous when I was in the room with those
Yeah.
people. I didn't know how to talk to them or if I should. You know what I mean? Like and it's like kind of special too. Like obviously, like I was idolizing some guy from another town
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm like 4 years, whatever, like a couple of years younger when you're a teenager, and some guy is on stage playing for like a couple hundred people is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Artie is a total prototype for what turned into these successful bands. Brand New and Taking Back Sunday and Glassjaw, and to an extent, you know, probably tons of other bands that aren't coming to mind. But Artie never really, and Walter to an extent, they never really got to the level of like, let's say, like a Dave Grohl or something like that. But they are
Yeah.
equally as important on different levels for
Yeah.
how their seed was spread throughout the world.
Yeah. I remember, and it was more so in the Era Type 11 days. When the band started, when Era Type 11 started, I was already pretty close with Phil from Clockwise, because Eddie and I were close. Um, so kind of my relationship with Phil kind of, then brought my relationship and friendship with Artie together. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And I remember when we started Taking Back Sunday, we were at a party at like Danielle and Rebecca's place in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And
Still
Artie
there.
and Artie pulls me over, and like he was giving me his rock star advice. And I'll never forget this because we're multiple PBRs in, you know, and he's like, listen, man, he's like, when you're on stage, he's like, you have to think you're the shit so that they'll think you're the shit. And like, you've got to control the room. So don't ever, you know what I mean? And it's true because he had that, or has that thing, that almost, that arrogance of like, yeah,
He has
because
that like
he
rock
believes,
star.
yeah,
Yeah,
he believes that this song is the greatest rock song of all time. And if it doesn't seem that he believes it, why should you fucking believe it? And why should you love it? And
definitely.
and I loved it because he would be up there talking his shit and doing his thing, and then afterwards we're having beers, laughing and talking crazy jokes, you know. And
Right,
it
right.
it, it could be his love for Oasis. I mean,
That I was just gonna say that because he definitely exudes, Noel and Liam Gallagher, and he actually saw them play a club. I don't know if it was Wetlands or might have been Wetlands or Brownies, but he's such a deep Oasis fan. I know he saw them even
yeah,
before they got huge, so he that was a huge inspiration. But he's actually right, and I'm glad that you guys had that talk. He still does that to people, by the way.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
if you
love it.
catch him on a certain night at Vitus and he pulls you aside and he's drinking and gets a bottle of whiskey, like you'll have that conversation. But
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And that's like, God, I mean, that's over 20 something years ago.
it's so funny, man. Not to talk about Artie for the whole podcast, but it's easy to like he's on that Wreckage unlike VHS cassette tape at CB's outside on the Bowery talking about being old, and he's in his 20s. You know what I'm saying? It's so
Well, I
funny.
mean, Bad Trip and Mind Over Matter, being his youth, and Mind Over Matter. I mean, their last show felt like a funeral for the scene almost. That's how important they were to the Long Island scene. So it's like there's probably that little part of him in his mind at that point that almost felt like, well, the heyday is over. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. I think that mind over matter to our scene, like if you were to compare it to like Seattle, like you could say they were like the Melvins or
mhm.
like Green River, like one of those bands that sort of like people know, but like they don't really truly
Yeah.
understand that like they really set the sort of prototype for everyone else after them.
Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable. And I'm hoping I'd love to hear those records also, maybe like kind of retweaked.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna
Good.
do it.
I was gonna ask him, like, I have both on vinyl, but those albums, to me are just unbelievable. George, again, one of my favorite frontmen of all time without a guitar. Uh, but those albums, there are still people to me that have never heard it, and when I make them listen to it, they're like, "Holy shit!" I'll never forget. Like, my ex-wife loved Glassjaw, and she got into the scene way later. When I first played her "Mind Over Matter," she goes, "I think you ruined Glassjaw for me."
I mean, I just played the song that Glassjaw stole the line from on Worship and Tribute. Do you know what song I'm talking about? What song is that?
Um,
It's Hectic Thinking. It's Hectic Thinking.
yeah, yes,
Yeah, I played that for a buddy of mine who didn't know that, and his mind was blown. Like he thought that I was saying, "Oh, they're influenced by them," or whatever, or they, I'm like, no, they literally took this entire
yeah, yeah.
lyric and
They
like,
literally paid
part.
tribute.
Yeah, yeah, they lifted the whole thing, and he was like, "Whoa, this is crazy."
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and Walter's kind of like again, like the same. Like he's like between everything he's done to me, like my girlfriend and I have always compared him to like he's like our Ian Mackay, but like
yeah.
in New York and like
Hmm.
but like on a different level. Like like you're not like going to bars with Ian Mackay and taking shots with them. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
Walter's the New York version of that, where he'll like hang out with you and party with you. You know?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he's the goddamn mayor of the scene,
Yeah.
and that'll never, and I don't think that'll ever change. His influence and the music that he has left, and is continuing to do is unbelievable. Seeing them on Saturday was fantastic. Um, and uh, even like everything that going on, with Sergio, just seeing him up there being happy, and with the band that really made him the musician who he was after 12 years, also being out with the Deftones, it
Right.
made me so happy. because his openness and heartfeltness about stepping away from the Deftones, I respected so much. I mean,
Mhm.
I've always tried to, anytime I was playing bass, take that guy's bass tone. Um, I've always tried to write bass lines like him. It His bass lines, I don't think Quicksand would have been Quicksand without them.
Oh,
You
totally.
know,
It's so key. It's so key.
it's unbelievably pivotal, and to see him up there smiling ear to ear and just ripping it, I was like so happy. You
Me
know,
too. Yeah. I'm actually working on something with him that I'm hoping to find out when I can mention that soon. But like
yeah,
since he had left Deftones, we started working on something, and I had kept that sort of like under wrap. I know I'm allowed to at least mention that it exists, but we have
nice,
some. We're writing, and it's not a band. We're writing and producing and
cool,
recording other artists, and we have a
good
couple like
shit, man.
cool collabs. But yeah, I love his bass playing. It's so percussive, and like the rhythm section with him and Alan like is like fucking our version of like John Paul Jones and Bonham, but for like
Mhm.
post-hardcore or something. It's just like
Yeah, yeah,
so
totally.
tight and groovy, you know?
Yeah. Now, also, Travis Bacon had mentioned that you two had recently worked on something together. Is that also Hush Hush?
Yes, but
Ugh.
you can kind of like assume based on what I just said that there might be a connection.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I'm loving, like, also through this podcast, there's just been these interweaving of like people, that I know and that I've met. I met Travis through Melissa because they know each other from, the clubs in the city back in the day and more like the goth end of things. And that's how we met when I went to go see Nitzareb. And then
Ah,
yeah, and then I asked him to be on the podcast so we could talk about, his band and the scoring he's doing. And then, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, he played in Black Anvil, and I saw
right.
him play with them at Vitus, and I was like, and all these connections, and I'm like, oh, and Gary started that, and then said that he knew you, and I was like, this is just
That's
crazy.
so funny. We were with him before Nitzareb.
Oh, really? Oh.
Before he went. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's, see, like, the connections are just so fun in this in our music scene, and that's what I love about it.
Me
um
too. Me too. We're so lucky. Yeah.
Everybody is so obtainable and everybody's right there. And yeah, there have been, guys that weren't, or bands that weren't, but for the most part, we've all always supported each other, and
Yes.
it's a lot of fun. And that's the other thing. I wanted to, support you and all the stuff that you're doing. So yeah, I mean, let's just run down the list, man. So helping out with this wreckage thing, right?
Yeah. So, and thank you, by the way. That support means so much to me, and doing this, I hope I'm supporting you as well. And it's just a endless cycle, I think, of where we come from and how we do things. I'm doing Wreckage with Artie Shepherd. We started doing that a year ago. The idea came up because Silent Majority was out of print, and
Hmm.
you can't get it unless you order it
No,
used on Discogs. So we had asked the original owner, and he gave us his blessing. So we have that right now, and then we're talking about doing Millhouse, Mind Over Matter, and more Silent Majority, and Motive, perhaps. And then
cool.
in between all that, we're doing a lot of like really cool throwback T-shirts to bands from the label. Like we did some Bad Trip shirts and some
Yeah, I
Millhouse.
saw that. Nice.
Um, so we're going to keep doing that, and that's in an effort to expand awareness of the scene that we came from, because it kind of feels like nobody was really trying to do that. So we're trying to keep that alive and help grow it,
Awesome.
And
I,
then
I I was so ecstatic, and it's funny too, because part of me was like, wow, I wonder why it took so long for someone to think of this. I'm sure we've all said it in our minds, like, you know, but the fact that you guys were able to have it come to fruition is fucking fantastic.
oh, dude, it's crazy, Antonio. Like this dude has the original DATs in his house for like Sons of Abraham, Neglect, Mind Over Matter, Trip Face. Like he lives in France, and
Yeah.
he emailed us the entire Silent Majority discography. he mailed it to my house, the Dats, with Tommy's
Wow.
graffiti handwriting, with the
Uh,
name of songs on everything from the studios. We got everything with the exception of like the demo.
wow.
And then I had that digitized, um,
Mhm,
to remaster it and everything. You could listen to the remaster on Bandcamp. It's all up
mhm.
there now, and we're gonna get on
Awesome.
streaming. But
Yeah,
yeah,
dude, and not only that, that Sons of Abraham record, I still put that on and it makes me feel like I could run through a brick wall.
yeah,
I
man, fuck.
I fucking love that record. I tell Neil that all the time, and I'm like, dude, god damn it, I fucking love that record.
That's Wreckage. That's the Wreckage front, and then I am playing in spotlights. We are still doing some touring and working on new music, and then I just started playing with Burn actually.
Oh, so
Uh,
I saw that you mentioned that, and it's funny because I just mentioned Burn in the last episode because Travis produced a single
yeah,
for Burn, and we were talking about how like, when he first went to recording and engineering school, like he just wanted to record hardcore bands, and I'm like, well, you got to record some of the godfathers of fucking New York hardcore, you know?
ridiculous. I think he did that at Rafe from Kelly Rydell's and Black Anvil's studio. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but uh, I would have loved to have been in the house when they were doing that.
Yeah,
Um, so right now I'm doing one show with Burn, and that's with Madball and Cro-Mags.
yeah, that
No, it's
is
not with
a sick.
Cro-Mags. Sorry, it's not with Cro-Mags. It's Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law. Yeah, yeah, that's a pretty hefty bill I saw.
Yeah, that's going to be ridiculous. It's free. It's at the park, on April 23rd. So that's really kind of crazy. I am playing in a band called Judas Knife, playing bass, and
Okay.
that's with Drew Thomas from Into Another, and on drums, and Joe Grillo from Garrison, and then I'm Total Meltdown is my New York hardcore band that I'm playing guitar
Yeah.
in. uh, and then we don't really have anything going on, but we have an EP out, and then Light Tower is my solo project, and we have a single out and playing shows in the next few months in New
Oh, I
York.
can't wait. Yeah, you got to give me a heads up on the shows because I want to be there. I'm loving the single.
Thanks.
Um, it's funny. I did an episode of the podcast where we went over the Jimmy World discography, and I had
Watched it.
yeah, I had Sam on it, and I jokingly said to Sam, I was like, yeah, Sam Hoyos, the hardest working musician on Long Island. He goes, well, Chris Enriquez has got me, and me and Malamo were like, oh yeah, you're right. Chris is definitely the hardest working musician
Well,
coming out
actually,
of.
to tell you, Sam wrote that song
Yeah,
with
he
me.
told me. Yeah, he co-wrote that with you, right?
He actually wrote the lyrics.
Oh,
I
nice.
told him that I was thinking about doing a solo project, but I had never written lyrics before.
Mhm.
So I just kind of told him what I wanted the song to be about, and he literally wrote the lyrics for me. And
Nice.
he came up with the vocal melody. I changed it a little bit, but that's pretty much Sam, like, written all over it because
Well,
I respect
I
him so
love
much.
it because it is true. Like that guy is doing something nonstop, and I love it. I always tell people I'm like Playing Dead is the best kept secret on Long Island. I love them. And there hasn't been anything that you've played musically that I haven't like really loved as well. So the two of you guys working together in a way, I was just like, this is I'm fantastic. I'm like, I'm
Thanks,
like,
man.
if I could put together my dream band, you guys would probably both be in it. So it's cool that you guys are working together. I love it.
Al, if you need me to play anything in the studio, if you ever, I'm totally down. Sam is definitely Long Island's best kept secret. He's so hardworking. He's so talented. He's humble. He's great. He supports the scene with his podcasts, and he talks about stuff beyond music. So he's culturally always trying to stay relevant. I just can't say enough good things about Sam.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to Sam Hoyos.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Red River Podcast was the first podcast I was ever on, and then spawned on to my other ones. But yeah, that Light Tower single hits hard. I love it. Is it an EP or an LP that's following?
It's an EP. It's
Okay,
it's it's out in a few weeks on the 22nd of April, and I played everything on it except for the keyboards, which I had Justin Williams.
okay. I was just gonna ask you that.
Yeah, he played with me in Gracer, and he's been in a bunch of other Long Island bands as well. And it's the first time I ever did anything like this, and the pandemic kind of just gave me the idea to try. I finally learned how to use GarageBand, and I was able
Yeah.
to kind of like just like sit on my laptop for hours. I live alone right now,
Hmm.
and so I was just sort of like uh you know, hours, man, just hours, like singing for hours and then trying to harmonize and figure out if the lyrics sounded stupid or not and if they were conveying the right thing. And so like it was just like the pandemic that really kind of allowed me the opportunity to figure out how to do this, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really nice that anyone is enjoying it at all. You know, I was very scared to put myself out there after having been a drummer for so long.
Yeah, I mean, perfect transition. I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, you got Dave Grohl, I mean, like it's funny. I used to make this joke all the time because only because I'm a big Peter Gabriel fan, and
Yeah.
and I'm not really when it comes to like that whole thing, I'm like, oh, I see what's going on. His drummer was trying to take over the whole time in Genesis. So I always
Funny.
joke around and I'm like drummers are hard to find, just stay behind the drums. Do you know how like difficult it is? But I love seeing you expanding your musical journey from playing guitar and doing your hardcore band and everything else. It's good because I mean the drummer is the foundation that holds everything down. So your understanding of music writing is there, and you've gotten to help set the tone for so many other songwriters, that the little bits of inspiration and learning from all the people you've been in bands with has now been sitting there, and now you're getting to manifest it and let it all come out on the other end of the drum set is really awesome.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. I feel like songwriting is something I didn't really understand until later on because I think back in the day, you know, you're jamming with your homies in a basement or something. Like, you know, you've all been there where you're like, that sounds cool, do it a few times, and like, then we'll see where it goes, you know. And there's something cool about that. Like, I would imagine that like a band like Mind Over Matter probably wrote songs like that. But then
Yeah.
to sort of like go full circle there when you listen to like a band like Era Type 11 or something. You know, it's like a verse, a chorus, a verse, and a chorus. And I think even though I knew that that's what I probably was listening to if I threw on the Beatles or Nirvana or something like that, it didn't really
Yeah.
register to me. And um, once I sort of understood the structure of songwriting and the different ways of how you could do that, like, you know, you just mentioned Peter Gabriel, like maybe when he was in Genesis, maybe they didn't talk about songwriting as much and they were just jamming. And then maybe when he went solo, he kind of was following more of like a structure.
Yeah,
You
when
know,
you think about In Your Eyes, I mean that's a perfect like verse chorus, get the catchiness, a bridge, and get out. Like
exactly, exactly. I'm just telling my girl that I'm on a podcast right now, so she doesn't. Um, but yeah, so yeah, that to me is so cool to like expand on that and learn even more about it. Like Queens of Stone Age is such a big influence on my songwriting, not with Light Tower, but just like the way my mind works. Cause I'm like, you could still do a verse, chorus, or even throw a pre-chorus in there if you want to, you know, kind of come up with other cool shit. But like they do it and they make the parts really interesting. So they repeat, but like it might be in a weird time signature or a weird
right.
thing. Maybe there's no drums and it's just vocals. I mean, that's to me like the coolest thing about songwriting is you could paint by numbers, but inside of those sort of verses or pre-chorus, etc., you can get creative. You don't have to be straightforward.
Right.
But Sam, the reason I called Sam was because I'm like, this guy really knows songwriting, and I've heard him talk about it. He knows
Yeah.
melody, harmonies, and I felt like he would be a good peer to call and be like, can you help me? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, totally. And that's the thing. Like music is collaborative, and the best music comes out of collaboration. Yeah, there are guys that can literally do it all. but there's something so good about pulling those little things, and you got to know, you got to find the right people. And Sam was definitely the right guy. So it's like, I know you're a big Foo Fighters fan.
Yeah.
It would be silly of us not to discuss, kind of the loss now of Taylor Hawkins. I mean, you
Oh yeah.
being a drummer and a Foo fan and someone, kind of in the music industry, without bringing it to a downer, it has to be
Yep.
mentioned and just respect. I was saying it for Dave Grohl to finally find a drummer that he could feel comfortable enough to step away and let shine and let be a drummer when there was all that drama in the beginning of the band
Yeah.
with the drumming situation. Um, and just how much I feel Taylor really did add to their songwriting, their creativity, fuck, even their live energy.
Oh yeah.
It's a big hit.
It's a
You
huge
know,
hit. It's
yeah, I was
yeah.
and unfortunately the news came across on that Friday night. It was my birthday, and I'm like, fuck, now I'll definitely remember this, like
Oh my God.
what a
Yeah.
what
I
what
was
a
actually out and I had to go home. I was so upset. Like, I know it sounds
uh,
dramatic. It's not like I knew the guy, but I was just like totally taken back. And I was out with a buddy of mine and I'm like, I can't hang out at this bar. I just feel like, you know what I mean? Like it just was a
yeah.
weird feeling. Like I didn't feel like being out and celebrating something
Mhm.
or just being joyous. It just really bummed me out. I mean, my whole thing with the Foo Fighters is like, to me, on a mainstream level, for them to exist means so much to me because even though my aspirations per se are not really on par with trying to be at that level, which I don't even think would ever happen anyway. I just thought it was cool that people that had roots in our world were representing. It kind of felt like a sports team.
Yeah.
Anytime they won a Grammy or a VMA, or if they were just on a talk show, to me, it felt like somebody was representing us,
Yeah.
our culture, knowing where they all came from. I know Taylor didn't really come from a punk background, but he still was so relatable. All those guys to me were relatable. They just happened to be famous, but they remind me of us and people we hang out with, the
Yeah,
nature.
I mean, there was, I mean, how much Nirvana and Sunny Day Real Estate did we listen to, or still
Totally.
listen to? I mean,
And even though I wasn't a big No Use for a Name fan, like that dude also came from the same cloth. They were
yeah, hmm,
germs. Like these are guys that came from what we sort
yeah,
of were a part of, and so just seeing the dynamic between Taylor and Dave in their interviews and on stage, and like how he was so young, like he was 50 years old. He was like the age of
yeah,
like some people that we know, and just playing rock music. Like that just hit really close to home for me. It's very much
yeah,
was
and,
emotional.
and people say, there's that cliche catchphrase of rock and roll is dead, um, and I always rebuttal that with not while the Foo Fighters are still a band.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Because I think not only is Dave Grohl the greatest example of what a rock star should be, um, I think he's one of the only ones. I'm, like I think about rock music as a whole, and I'm like, who's doing what he can do?
Absolutely.
Who's influencing in that way? Have there been bands that have done that in the past? Yeah, Guns N' Roses did it. Okay, but for a short span of time, then they had their weird, it was them but it wasn't them, and
Yeah, yeah.
they've come back and they've kicked ass in that, but not dropping album after album after tour and not stopping for, god, like
Yeah.
it's an anomaly in
Also
the day and
beyond that,
age
I
that we're
think like vocalizing his um like the Foo Fighters as a whole were always extremely vocal about their appreciation for where they are, and where they come from, and just always going out of their way. Even the opening acts, like on their tours, were always indicative of that.
in. Yeah,
And Taylor was very much somebody that also said stuff like that. I just thought the whole thing is so sad. You know what I mean? Because it's also really relatable on a deeper level because I think a lot of us, I don't know about you, but certainly myself, I can relate to having some issues with substance abuse and I'm not saying that anything about like that, but like obviously they found stuff in his system according to the reports, and that's a
Yeah.
shame because when I'm just saying when you go out and do stuff like that, um, you don't necessarily think that you're not going to wake up the next day.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm sure that wasn't the intention there, and
No.
that's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I have been lucky. I mean, I don't know if lucky is the term. I've been lucky enough not to have a substance abuse problem, but it came at the expense of the fact that I started burying friends at a very young age from it.
Oh yeah, I feel
So,
you.
so it's one of those things where it 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 I struggled with it in other ways. I mean, we mentioned in talking about Wreckage, we mentioned Motive. Al Carter, being the original singer of Motive, was like a big brother to me. Um, Losing him to drugs is something that has stayed with me my entire life.
I remember that. I'm so sorry.
He did his first my first tattoo was done by him.
Oh,
Like I have this you know, and it's been, you know, it's been more than 25 years or no, 2001. Yeah, so it's over 20 years and it still hits me. So,
yeah,
the weight and the gravity of it's not it's hard enough losing somebody as it is, but when it's losing somebody to something that you feel could have been prevented, it's even harder, you know.
absolutely. That's why it's so crazy to me. I've had the same sort of history as well with like losing people, family members, young, like way too young.
Yeah.
And so like, I even without getting into names had, and I'm not talking about Jason from On the Mighty Princes, but like I had another friend. I just wanted to say that so that whatever I'm about to say
People
doesn't
don't think it's yeah.
make people think this is what I'm referring to because he died at 33
Yeah.
of a heart attack. But I had a friend on Long Island who was part of the scene who was struggling and called me, and I wasn't there in the way that I probably should have. And I lost that person a couple years ago. And
Mm.
that was something I thought about a lot that really hurt. But like I had a lot of friends that, for whatever reason, whether they were just trying to make me feel better or not, were just trying to go out of their way to be like, you can't blame yourself. And they're right, like, but at the same time, you need to check on your homies, and if you know that
Yeah.
they might not be up to good things, you should check on them, even if they're not asking, and just make sure that they're, you know, you know, just taking care of themselves. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, it's true. And I think we're also finally at that time where, you know, the macho-ness of like, we're fucking guys, we can do it all. Like we're past that.
Right. We're
Yeah,
all special
yeah,
human beings.
we've got tattoos. We hang out in shady bars and we've been in many mosh pits. But we all struggle with shit. Like we're all
Yeah.
down and out. When I was going through some of the hardest times in my life, you know, um, you know, people reached out to me, like 6 years or so ago, man, I hit rock bottom and, you know, perfect example, like, like we mentioned it, George from Mind Over Matter was there,
Great guy.
like, yeah, just imparting his Buddhist wisdom to me, and
Such a good
just being there, Chris Coots's, like the guys that were help lifting me up, um, you know, are all from the scene, all guys who, on the exterior, people might be like, oh, these macho dudes, like, but
guy.
yeah, it's okay to ask for help. All of us struggle with our shit, whether it's, depression, anxiety, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. And yeah, I think, we owe it to ourselves to be there for other people because all of us have been in those times when we've needed somebody.
Yeah,
And
man. Absolutely.
it's that bond that ties us is deep. I mean, I'll never, you know, us being from Long Island, I'll never forget. Like as I was driving cross country on tours, people be like, "You're from Long Island? Do you know this person? Do you know that person?" And it's like you chuckle and you're like, "Yeah, I do." And they associate you with that and those bands. And yeah, the bond and tie that music creates too is why it's as powerful as it is, hitting people on many levels just because of they love the songs, but also the ties that it has brought that'll never be broken.
You're absolutely right. I never, and I didn't realize that either, and I'm sure you didn't. That like that the day that I walked into the PWAC in 1994 to go see Avail, that like however many years it's been. I think that's 26 years ago. Am I
Yeah.
right about that? No, is that right? 22 plus. I can't think. Yeah. Well,
Well,
anyway, you get the point. Yeah.
yeah. I was thinking about it the other day because the first time it just passed the 25 fucking years since I first saw Jimmy Eat World in '97 at Coney Island High
Oh Jesus. I think that
with Mineral.
I think it was 20. Yeah, it was something like yeah, it was like 26 years ago. That's crazy, by the way. Um, yeah, like 20, yeah, 26 years ago when I walked into the PWAC, I didn't think that I would still be talking to a bunch of people that I saw in that room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're one of them. Like
Yeah.
I saw Scarab at
Hmm.
like the Pipeline. You know what I mean? Like
Dr. Shays,
Dr.
you know.
Shays, it's absolutely nuts. But yeah, man, it's all very true. Like I'm very lucky because I think we're all very lucky that we're part of something bigger than us, because people that just listen to music cannot relate to that. If you're just like, oh man, I really love alternative music, but you're not really part of a scene like we are, like
Mhm.
not the same thing. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
not to like say there's anything wrong with that, but we're lucky is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah, no, we are very lucky and blessed. When I think when I sometimes think about like I have a good friend that just moved to Pennsylvania, but like middle of nowhere Pennsylvania.
yeah,
And we went to go see the Psychedelic Furs
nice.
a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Yeah, this show's definitely not going to roll through the town that I'm going to." And I was like, "Man," I was almost like fucking sad for him. Like he's going to have to drive a couple hours to either Philly or Pittsburgh. And I'm like, "Wow, I couldn't imagine moving to a place where I didn't have this accessibility to the music that I love and seeing it live, or even multiple record stores to go to.
Oh, dude, you're
We
absolutely
get
right about
spoiled
that.
by that. I mean,
You forget.
because we get to hop around to different ones and find different records because different people from different areas are selling records to different shops. So it's like like if you're not here or like LA, like
Right, right,
I
right.
feel like people in LA and people in the like New York tri-state area have something that a lot of other places don't have, and it's crazy to think, you
Dude,
know.
you want to bug out this dude that worked for Revolver, who's in his 20s still, I think. This dude's name is John Hill, and he's a writer, and he wrote at Vice and Revolver and some other cool sites. He told me that he interviewed Glassjaw a few years ago,
Mhm.
and that he's not from here. He's from San Fran, maybe the Bay Area, maybe San Fran,
Okay.
and
Metallica territory.
yeah, exactly. But he's of the age where like when he heard about Glassjaw and Brand New and Take Back Sunday, that like that was on MTV basically.
Right.
And he was sort of probably from that Blink 182 generation. And he told me that when he was taking the Long Island Railroad from New York City to Bayshore to go interview Glassjaw at Merch Direct, that like he felt like he was going into the territory in which this music lived. Almost like I imagine, like I'm gonna compare it to on like a weird level to like when I first went to Seattle, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this is where like fucking like Kurt and Lane and all these guys like hung out. Like he was kind
Yeah.
of the way he had described his trek on the Long Island Railroad to Bayshore was comparable to, I think, how I discussed my experience going to Seattle, to be like, oh shit, like I'm in their territory kind of.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds super dramatic, but that's really strange to try to like wrap your head around when you and I have been taking the Long Island Railroad in and out of Long
Yeah.
Island for like 40 plus years at this point.
Yeah.
And it makes you appreciate where you come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is. For as frustrated as I get with New York, I realize how blessed I am, and I like, the only other place I'll move and probably plan on is California. Kind of LA area when my kids are out of school and stuff. But perfect example of this is we got to see our buddy, our buddy from Aerotype 11,
Yeah.
Adam, who is in
Oh,
San
Adam.
Diego now. So when I saw him at the Quicksand show, the first thing he said to me is like, "Dude, all I've been fucking doing is eating pizza." And I'm like, "Yeah, those are the things yeah, in San Diego, he's got record stores and he's got bands that
Burritos.
he can go see and right, yeah, yeah. But I'm thinking to myself like, I want to go to San Diego and eat those fucking burritos. You're right,
The
you know.
burritos are the best in America and in the world. And
Oh,
sorry,
100%.
anyone that disagrees, but it's true.
Yeah, yeah, you are incorrect. Yeah, but hands down, and the best tacos I've ever had were from a fucking truck in LA. So it's
Yeah, no, but you're right. Like, yeah, you come here, and I have friends that left New York and come back, and they're like, "Where's we got to go to a bagel shop?" You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Native things around us. I had a like I was at a bar last night that I'd never been to called Other Room, and it was in downtown Manhattan, and it's been there since '96, and I never heard of it, and it was fucking dope. And the bartender, when he told me he was there since '96, I said, "Wow!" I like just when I thought I knew everything, and he goes, "Isn't that the greatest thing about New York? That there's always something that you can discover that you didn't know about." And my girl and I talk about that often because even though we've been here for 40 plus years, there's still a shit ton of stuff that we don't know about that we can still go and see. So it really is a special place.
Yeah,
It's still,
and then new things pop up. So
yeah,
what I mean, I don't think there's not a week that goes by that I don't talk to someone in our group and we don't mention something about our anger and depression over the loss of places like CBGBs and wetlands and things like
oh,
that. And even driving into the city the other day, going to Irving Plaza, past where the Continental was, and the building is gone now.
gone. It's
I'm
gone.
like the physical place. I almost felt a little bit better knowing it was there. That some of the best shows I've ever played in my life were there. Some amazing nights. Then going and getting pizza at Ray's or going to Dojos,
Yeah, dude,
and I was like, the
exactly.
building is gone. I felt like a part of me died, but in the same aspect, to think about it, back in the Continental days, we didn't have St. Vitus,
We
and
didn't have
that
St. Vitus,
and
thank
that
God for
came
that.
right. So there are still some things are still growing also in New York and
Yeah,
cultivating.
you're right. And
You know,
they're doing cool shit. The kids are doing cool shit.
yeah. So it's still there as much as we want to whine about the glory days and the clubs that are gone and Tramps and Roseland and Coney Island High. Um, it's crazy. Funny. Let's loop this back around to Dave Grohl. I was eating at Dojo's once
Oh man,
outside, and
Joe,
I was
man.
and I was talking about how Continental used to be right there, and now it's these condos and everything. And I'm pointing to it and I'm bitching and I'm complaining. And who walked out of it with somebody and started walking down St. Mark's? Dave Grohl.
Really?
And I was like, what the fuck? This was like, God, it was early 2000s.
That's incredible.
I was like, you know,
Did you go up to him?
no, I kind of sat in. I would, how it is. I would have had to. I was eating outside. I would have to run through dojos, come
Yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
out,
Just be a freak.
and yeah, and just be a complete like and I've never really been that guy. I mean, we could go over tons of stories of people we've bumped into in the city. I had Perry Farrell walking in front of me one time,
Wow.
and I was like, "Who's this tall, crazy dude with like a girl on each arm in a fur coat?" And I was like, "Oh, it's fucking Perry."
Hell
You know,
yeah.
bumped into Mike D from the Beastie Boys. Like
I seen Ad Rock. Dude, I one time I saw Danny DeVito walking down the street next to me. Yeah,
Dude, I ran into Danny DeVito once running into a bar. He was coming out and he held the door for me. And I was like, what the? I
that's
was like, no,
insane.
let me hold the door for you.
I saw him like by like 28th Street and like Park, just like walking down Park Avenue. My favorite story is actually not a musician. I was at Lit Lounge back in the day
Oh, I loved Lit.
Second Avenue,
Oh,
and
God.
Bill Murray just walked in on a random evening and was on the dance floor smoking cigarettes,
Yeah.
drinking.
Or I remember leaving shows at Brownies, like when Aerotype and Sam I Am did those 2 nights in a row. I went with my friends both nights to Crover Milk Bar over there, which had
Okay.
one of the most badass jukeboxes because it was all like Into Another and
Oh, yeah.
Burn, and the jukebox there was like fucking stellar, you know. So it being like late '90s, it was like, you know,
Dude, there's a jukebox in Bushwick at a place called Old Stanley's, and it has Life of a Spectator on it.
really.
Isn't that crazy? It's fucking insane. Yeah, well, it's run by like punk people, but they're not from Long Island.
Yeah.
I think they're from upstate New York, but they put Life of a Spectator in there.
Well, think about
Well,
that band Polar Bear Club. Those kids, not being from around here, were so influenced by Silent Majority to, start their band and then kind of name it after a song.
dude,
Like,
not to get more depressing about shit that's gone, but I just got this tattoo a couple weeks ago by Grizz
nice.
at Kings Avenue,
Ah, no.
and he goes, "Hey man, have you ever like drank at the bar that was Don Fury Studios?" And I'm like, "No, where is it?" And he's like, "It's over there." And I went to it. So depressing, bro. Like
To
it. I mean,
think of all the music. Oh my
no
God.
disrespect to the bar. Like the bar was fantastic, but I walked in alone. It was a kind of like an interesting experience. I wasn't with anybody. I just
Yeah.
went in, ordered like an old fashioned, and I'm just like in complete disbelief that like Victim and Pain Start Today were recorded in this place.
Right.
And I'm looking around, and it's just as modern New York as it can possibly get. Like
Yeah.
model looking type people, students, really lame conversations that you can kind of overhear, and you're just like, God, like
Hmm.
literally like New York hardcore was like invented in this basement. Like
Yeah.
what happened here? you know, but
Yeah.
I mean that's
It's
the way it goes.
crazy. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Things like we said, things crash and burn, and new stuff comes out of it. So it's like, for as much as you know you and I get referenced from our former bands, there's also the other things that we're now birthing now. You know what I mean? Like Light Towers, coming out of the birth of On the Might of Princes.
Yeah,
um
totally.
and I'm gonna say it to you, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but it sometimes it bothers me, because I say to people, like, there really is a point where On the Might of Princes should have been and could have been the biggest fucking band on Long Island.
Thanks, man.
And and dropping some of the best stuff at the time, but it was in that transitional point in the scene where you had the still kind of local, you had the ones that were really taking off, and there was like a little bit of a hole or a transition period in those years. And I go back now and I'm like, you know uh, if that record was dropped today, it would be
Right.
it would be fucking destroying everybody's ears.
It's
um
probably a good thing for me to mention that. Like, I don't know if you knew this. I was working on a documentary about the
yeah,
band.
because I know, because you had asked me about using
That's
some
right.
old scare stuff, and I was like, yeah, man, I'm fuck yeah, like, if you need something, let me know.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I just finished stringing it together, so it's a 90-minute film already. Pretty much, it's all strung together already. I actually watched it a few times with some friends in my house, but the next thing I have to do is splice in flyers and music and performances, but it's pretty much done.
Nice.
So I'm gonna get that out, and we talk about what you just said in the sense of like we definitely did not foresee a future in or a career, like 1,000%. Not even like trying to be cool. Like nobody even like thought about the possibility of that. And even when that was starting to happen around us, like I remember Victory Records got a hold of Jason and somehow figured out that he worked at Borders Books and Music and called the store and
Wow,
asked for him in
that's
like
crazy.
Smithtown or some shit. And we were offered that deal previous to when Taking Back Sunday was, and right after Thursday, and we totally said no. We didn't even hesitate to like think about it. We just said no, because we just didn't see a place for an indie rock band on a label that was putting out like Blood for Blood
Yeah,
at the time and like Earth Crisis. And so you know, there were a lot of missteps in our decision making that caused us to not be one of those bands that got huge. But I kind of wanted to tell that story in the same way that maybe like on a smaller scale, like Anvil kind of
right.
was the same, where it's like, you know, we weren't the first to do it, but we were probably like one of the first to like be playing like a screamo kind of style and then leave Long Island and then, you know, get offers that we unfortunately didn't really see the value in.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I
I
didn't
mean,
think that like these bands are going to start playing fucking huge, you know, stadiums and shit, you know.
yeah, but like I think about it, like I said, and if that album came out today, um, and you were to hit the road with it, it would grow like wildfire, you know.
I think that because now people love this stuff, like, and the one thing that's different about today than before is like no one's afraid to use the word emo or screamo. They'll just say
Yeah,
it, like I'm in a screamo band.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I know,
It's
I
way
know.
weird.
It's there's so many tags, fucking post-hardcore, emo, screamo, whatever it might be. It all came from the same melting pot of what we had going on. And that's what's great is that it all put its own flair on it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally. And
and
there was a community for sure. I remember I was in the studio. We were all in the studio when you were recording at one
yeah,
for a few hours. One
yeah,
day, I remember being in there at the place that General George was working
yep.
at.
Hmm.
Um, what was that place called?
Oh my God.
Pie
Oh,
Studios.
Pie Studios, that's right. Oh
Pie
my
Studios.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah, that place was gorgeous. That live room, dude. Oh,
yeah,
oh my
really
God.
fun stuff,
And
man.
and then also getting to record with Juan at Magic Shop too.
Yeah,
So,
that's gone.
oh my God, that's gone. And I think about that all the time and the multiple levels to that studio. I was telling my son because he wanted to buy Tony Hawk Pro Skater on his um Nintendo Switch. And I'm like, dude, when that shit first came out, I was recording the Taking Back Sunday stuff. And at Magic Shop, they had it and we were playing it like if I wasn't in the vocal booth, I was like,
That's
you know,
so funny. You know, two full circle things to our conversation. Sonic Highways, the Foo Fighters show, the New York episodes in Magic Shop. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking really cool. I think that was
Crazy.
the last session. And on another full circle sort of thing, looping our conversation, I don't know if you remember the basement of Magic Shop where you would go down and they had archived old recordings of like really crazy shit. Like,
Oh yeah.
and they were I don't know if they were digitizing it, but they were restoring it in whatever
Hmm.
format.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going as far as like I know they said this on Sonic Highways, but like Woody Guthrie, like
Yeah.
you
It's
know, like
it's crazy. There was so much history and so many different sounds in that place. It's like insane to think about. You
well,
know,
so
and
that guy still does that today, and that's the
uh,
guy that digitized Life of a Spectator.
oh wow.
Yeah,
Fuck. See,
it's the same
everything's
guy.
connected in our scene, dude.
Yeah, we call like what already was like call up the dude that used to own Magic Shop who God I'm embarrassed something Rosenthal I'm just losing his name right now, but Steve Rosenthal I think it
Steve,
was his
yeah,
name.
yeah.
And he when I went to Dumbo with the Solid Majority Dats to digitize them, he was in the middle of restoring Willie Nelson recordings.
Wow.
Is that crazy?
That's amazing.
He does this for a living now.
That's so cool. I
Yeah.
actually I'll have to pop it up on the screen during when I release this episode, but I have a picture of me and Willie Nelson from when I met him.
Oh
I,
wow.
dude, I was like so pumped. I love Willie Nelson. Uh, and jokingly enough, I had said on my bucket list, I want to see Willie Nelson, and I got to meet him that day, and I was like, well, I surpassed that. Check that shit off.
Fuck yeah, man. It's so cool. But you're right. It's all that. Well, the New York thing is, if you stick around, I always feel like if you stick around long enough, you just meet people you looked up to and hang out with them and be their friend. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, and even if it's just somebody local too. Like, it's just like the cool thing about sticking around long enough. You know, um, and some people get out of it and they don't want to be part of it anymore, or they don't have any interest, or they don't care about meeting their heroes. But like, I feel like, and it's not about meeting your heroes. Like, Steve Rosenthal was from Magic Shop. He's not necessarily like a hero or anything like that, but he's somebody from when we recorded there, you know, and it's
Yeah,
all,
yes.
yeah.
It's crazy to think, the insane timelines and how everything is weaved together. Um, music, life, friendships, so much is built around is built on music, and it's fantastic to think. So speaking of music, so you have that stuff all coming out, you're doing all that stuff. What are some shows you've got coming up that you're excited about seeing now that we've got some live stuff?
God damn, what shows am I excited about seeing? I have to you
I
can
know.
put me on the
Check my
spot now,
calendar.
you know.
Yeah,
I'm,
I'll
I'm
hit you.
looking,
Yeah, I'm going to
I'm
see.
literally, yeah.
I'll be at St. Vitus on Saturday seeing Actors. Um,
That's a great band. I love them.
if
I'm
you're
going
not doing anything Saturday, you should swing through, dude. There.
I'm rehearsing, but maybe I'll stop in. I'm on Sunday. I'm going to see Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage. Has a podcast, and he's doing a live podcast event, like a talk show, and he's interviewing Vinny Stigma
Oh,
at,
nice.
Berlin, which is Jesse Mallin's bar.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go watch that because I can't get enough Vinny Stigma stories.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm Judas Knife is playing Knitting Factory on Friday with Slow Crush, which is a great shoegaze band from Australia. And then on Sunday, the 10th, I'm going to see Chelsea Wolfe and Converge and Steve Brodsky as one band called Blood Moon.
So
Uh,
yeah, I read about that. I
yeah,
like Chelsea Wolf a lot. I am in the minority when I say I'm not a Converge fan.
no,
It's
I get it.
I've never, it's not the hardcore that ignited anything in me. It's I get people's love for it, but it just wasn't my thing.
Acquired taste, you know. It's like, you know, man, I got a bunch of metal friends that listen to Cannibal Corpse, and I don't listen to Cannibal Corpse, but I understand and I appreciate
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah, totally. 100%.
but yeah, I'm doing the Light Tower first show is on the 20th with Chamberlain at Knitting
April?
Factory. April 20th, yeah, 420.
Okay.
Um, that's happening, and then yeah, I feel like oh, I'm seeing Jawbreaker at the end of April
Oh,
in
nice. Yeah,
Irving,
and
Washington.
there's those multiple shows. They're doing like what, like 4 shows, I think.
Yeah, and I got it's funny, so many Jaws. I got tickets 3 days in a row to see Jaw Box in
See,
the
out of
city.
the two Jaws, that's the one I favor most.
Good man. I agree. You know, it's hard to compare, but they just played together, which is hilarious.
I
But
know, it's really funny. I was laughing. That one show that they were doing in I think it was in Colorado, that also had like Sam I Am and stuff on it. I was like, if you told me back in the day that that show was happening, it sounded more like a festival of all the different headliners, but they were all playing. It
always
like I
strange.
was like, that's so cool.
Dude,
But
speaking of, I'll finish this by saying we're Spotlights is playing a festival in May, and it's a festival like the weirdest festival ever. So it's Youth of Today, Blonde Redhead, Carcass, um, Danny Brown. It's just
what?
Converge, Cave In.
Hmm.
It's like the Locust.
Wow, that
It's
is
there's like 40 bands playing this festival in Texas, and it's literally like hip hop, grindcore, hardcore, shoegaze. It's just like every kind of music all at once. But
that's pretty
talk about
awesome.
killer. Yeah. So
Yeah. That's one thing I'm looking forward to. I didn't grab tickets yet. I'm kind of waiting until closer to, but I really Rage Against the Machine and Run the Jewels at
Oh,
MSG is something that I haven't gotten to see um Run the Jewels yet, and I'm a fucking
huge
huge
fan.
fan. Huge
Yeah.
fan. It's if they drop one more record that's just as good as the last because they just keep topping themselves,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go throw down and say that they're the best hip hop group of all time, and they'll surpass Wu Tang for me. Because I'm like they've got something that just I think hip hop has been missing for a long time. They did it independent for so fucking long, and it's just mind
I
blowing to me.
agree, dude. Every fucking record is a 10 out of 10. It's
Yeah.
just stupid.
And it's like you always expect a killer album to be followed up by something that you're gonna, you kind of expect to be a little disappointed on because you love the last one so much. And every time I'm like, God damn it, you guys did it
Dude,
again.
exactly. I felt that way about I'm not gonna front like the first one I might have like not like listened to enough to kind of get to that level. The second one I was in love with, the third one I was in love with, and this fourth one is absurd.
Yeah.
You
It
know what I
it
mean? It's
it's
ridiculous.
absolutely insane to me. And it's like I've heard LP on some podcasts talking about like when Rage broke up, Zach came to stay with him in New York, and they just kind of just hung out, did nothing, smoked weed, and worked on some hip hop. And I'm like, where are those tracks? Like,
Dude, I would love to hear those. I get
I've
the chills whenever he collaborates with
I
them.
know that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, he'll spit bars on their records, but I'm like, where is that album that LP is gonna produce a hip hop album for Zach? Because I want it.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna front fucking Rage Against the Machine, man. I mean,
Oh hell yeah! Are you kidding me, dude?
one of
I
the
was
one of the greatest crossover bands of all time. That
one of the
it
best I've ever
hit.
seen in my life.
Oh, they hit every group of music type of person can find something they love in those Rage records, whether you like hip hop, hardcore, punk rock, metal, alternative, you know, it's
Evil
all
Empire
there.
is my shit. That's the best one, man.
Yeah.
Evil Empire. Yeah.
If you can't rock out to those records, you don't like music.
Right, right. I feel that way, man. I wanted to say one more thing because it's mostly Long Island people, but I didn't get the lineup finalized, but I'm playing Mr. Beery's with Light Tower
Oh, nice.
on Friday, August 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, well, if you need another band for it, let me know. Maybe I'll come
I
out of
do.
my acoustic retirement.
I do actually.
And
Let's talk.
Beery's is like my CBGB's of Long Island. So if you need me, let me know.
I actually do. I'm not. I'll text you the
Okay.
details after. Like we really. I have a whole lineup with no headliner.
Yeah, you know what though? If it's all the bands I'm thinking that it's gonna be, you almost don't need a headliner because it's all such a, you know. But
Yeah, but
if
it'd be
it,
good to have someone local to kind of, round out, like because we're like it's no nobody playing is from Long Island, even though technically I am. So like it'd be great
yeah.
to have somebody from Long Island play, you know.
All right, man. Let me know. We'll continue to talk about it. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. It's just
Okay.
always fun seeing you and getting to talk to you. And you did my other podcast, Fascination Street, where we talked about The Cure a little bit, and that's why I really wanted to do this one here and just kind of talk about what's going on musically again in the world, all the stuff that you're doing. You're doing some great things in continuing the Long Island and New York City scene. All the stuff you do with Revolver Magazine. Just keep doing what you're doing, man. Like, I think about the little kid that I met, and the fucking dude you are now, and it's like proud older brother status where I'm
Thank
like,
you
this
so much. That's
motherfucker
really
is killing it on so many levels. Seeing you still doing it and happy and producing great stuff is a pleasure from a musical fan standpoint and as a friend standpoint. So,
I'm
thanks
proud
for
to
hanging
know
out.
you, man. I'm so glad that we still know each other all these years later, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Enjoy the rest of your day. Everybody. Oh, well, Chris, where can they all find you on social media?
Chris Enriquez Drums is my Instagram, and then Light Tower Music is my solo project Instagram.
Awesome. And if you just Google Chris Enriquez, you'll find links, articles, and all kinds of fun shit, and probably some funny ass photos.
Yeah, probably.
All right, man. Have a great day, brother. Be good.
Love it, bro. Thank you.
You got it. Later.